thanks everyone for having me. As Adam mentioned, my name is Joel Rodriguez, and basically I'm giving you a lecture on just games marketing and business insights for producers and future game CEOs, which some of you may very well be. It's important just to have a good understanding of business basics, and just to get some general advice, as many of you will be starting careers in the games industry. And one thing I found when working with different departments and disciplines in the games industry is that you don't always really get a lot of transparency in the business side of things, or understand why things work in the nonsensical way they work. So I'm really, again, humbled to be speaking with you all. Just quickly about me. Well, actually, real quick agenda. I'll be going through a little bit about myself, what a senior brand manager does. Give some 7 business tips for everybody, some general business advice, I think that would be helpful for anyone to keep in mind. Some specific guidance for people on the producer track. Producers are a role as marketer that I work with the most. Producers are the most business-facing role in game development, I would say. And I had a lot of producer friends take a look at the presentation. Make sure I give you guys some really solid advice for your future careers. And then some closing thoughts, and we'll roll into some Q&A. I don't want to speak too much of your time because just talking at you, I do want to get to this Q&A and answer any questions you guys have about the games industry and about my experience. So without further ado, about me, I'm a senior brand manager at a company called Versus Evil. I'm living in the San Francisco Bay Area currently, and I'm a lifelong gamer. And I graduated from SMU with my MBA in 2014. That's partly why I'm speaking with you. I actually connected with Professor O, and I spoke about how when I was at SMU Cox, I would have loved to have had a little bit more interaction with the Guildhall folks, because I've been in entertainment marketing for a decade, and Dallas and the Cox School of Business is very focused on energy and finance and banking and telecom, all really good, important industries. But the entertainment and gaming sort of culture and industries in Texas, they just need continued nurturing. When I started in grad school, there was even less than there is currently. It's been great to see that grow as an industry in the DFW, and in large part thanks to Guildhall. So it was really important to me to connect with you all and get this opportunity to speak with you guys and be a little involved more with Guildhall. And then my hope is in the future, as Guildhall moves to the main SMU campus, there's a little more exposure for you guys to those just different disciplines and those types of students. So I'm going to go through some of the places I've worked. I started my career actually at Funimation Entertainment. Some of you from the DFW may be familiar. It's an anime company. They're the ones who do the publishing and distribution for Dragon Ball Z. That was before my MBA career. So I worked there for several years as a brand manager. I left, got my MBA, went over to PlayStation in a sales role, doing something called channel marketing. Basically what channel marketing is marketing at specific sales channels. So when you're PlayStation, you're not just selling games, but you're also selling consoles, you're selling PlayStation Plus subscriptions, you're selling controllers. And so I had to market all these items, but specifically at places like Amazon.com or GameStop or at Best Buy. And this would mean anything from what are the big graphics and visuals and at the Best Buy, at the PlayStation section in the Best Buy. What does the PlayStation section in Best Buy look like? I worked on projects such as that, down to what does the PlayStation product page look like on Amazon.com? Or when you buy a PlayStation on Amazon.com, do you get a little email telling you to go ahead and buy a PlayStation Plus subscription as well? That sort of like email CRM aspect. So I got to work on a variety of projects with a variety of big retail accounts for PlayStation. Afterwards, I moved back into brand management at Telltale Games. If you guys aren't familiar with Telltale Games, they're mostly known for the Walking Dead adventure series. They're also known for a Minecraft adventure series and as well as a Batman one. They used to make adventure point and click based style of games. And now I'm currently at Versus Evil, and Versus Evil is a video game publisher that focuses on indie games. So the sort of, you know, 3-4 people in a garage working on their dream, we help them realize their dream with funding, marketing support, helping them with localization, QA, and just a myriad of other of just needs. So I think the biggest franchises Versus Evil has is the Banner Saga. It was a trilogy of RPGs that looked like a nice 1980s cartoon with animated Vikings, and Pillars of Eternity. It's a franchise from Obsidian Entertainment. You guys might know Obsidian from working on the Fallout New Vegas and from working on Outer Worlds recently. They were just recently bought by Microsoft. So that was fun because we were actively working on that games campaign while they were being bought with Microsoft, and we got to retain the publishing rights to the game, but that was an interesting time. Some of the projects I've worked on, the Walking Dead games for Telltale Games, worked on those marketing campaigns, as well as just some other projects at Telltale during my time there. And then 2 projects notable at Versus Evil, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, and Yaga. Yaga is probably my favorite project so far out of any game I've worked on. And I'm going to be using these 2 games as examples quite a bit. So what I do, what does the senior brand manager do? Well, I make marketing plans for video game launches. I identify target customers. I look at the competitive landscape. I determine, you know, what are the feature sets and what are the things about this game that customers are going to value. You know, is it going to be the action? Is it going to be the escapism? Is it going to be the artwork? And I help identify, again, the competitive landscape. Who are we launching against? What are people playing? Where are we launching, whether it's on Steam or the Epic Store or Xbox? How much we should price things? And what exactly are we doing and how are we saying it? It's a pretty all-encompassing approach. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a second, but basically you have to think about every aspect of your game's marketing every step of the way, from the artwork to the description to your trailers, and again, to who's ultimately going to buy this product and why are they going to buy this product. So I identify that market. I identify, you know, what is the value we're bringing, the value proposition we're bringing to the customers, and then we develop the creative strategy from that. So in this example with Pillars of Eternity 2, we had actually released it in 2018 to PC. It won quite a few awards, won PC Gamer's Best RPG of 2018, but it was also a very niche product. It's a CRPG. So a lot of pointing and clicking and things that don't necessarily translate that well to the console market. There were some things we knew about this customer base just from our research, just from our data collecting and surveys and market research that we worked on. And you know, we knew that people who were into hardcore RPGs on their PC actually tend to have a little more income, and they spend a little bit more income on gaming than average gamers. And when you think of, there's no average gamer, I guess I should say, but when you think of people who are gamers in the game market and how huge, how immense this market is, you have people who claim gaming as a hobby, and you have people who buy Call of Duty and FIFA, and that's it every year. But they're still gamers, right? And they're still like participating in this market, right? So you have to kind of determine, you know, who out of that is actually going to buy your game. And when we're taking it to the console market, we also have to take into account how are people going to see our game, how we're going to interact with the game. You can see on the left side, there's this great pirate ship artwork that's really easy to see on a monitor that's, you know, 5 feet away from you. On a TV screen 14 feet away from you, that's really hard to see. It's really hard to read. That logo's really muddy. So when we're bringing it to console, we wanted to pare that down, make that logo a lot cleaner, give that nice white background. We wanted to keep the RPG party together because that is the sense of an RPG, right? It's that party aspect, your band of misfits. but we want to brighten up that artwork so it stands against that nice HD TV in your living room. And then we chose that white background because one, it's a nice contrast. It helps you see all the artwork and the logo. But also, again, look at the competitive landscape for your games. If you look at the Witcher 3 box art, it's just Geralt against white. It's actually really boring. It's really, really simple, but it does the job. And that nice white background gives a nice sense of, I don't know, premium quality, right? It's very clean. It's very inviting in a way. So we adapted the creative from PC to console, knowing we're going to come to a new market and go to a new sales channel. But also because we knew what we're going to have to do marketing lever-wise. And what I mean by that is we have to identify our marketing tactics and set that marketing budget. And we have to, when we're developing our creative strategy and our marketing creative, we have to take into account all the places people are going to see our artwork. So on the left, it's a PlayStation Store ad. You can see, again, that really nice white background. The artwork pops against that. We have space for Laurels from PC Gamer, Hardcore Gamer. So that was a real PlayStation Store ad we spent against. On the right, not the best picture, but it was a PAX West booth from last year. Again, we knew we were going to print out this big sort of graphic wall, invite people over to play the demos, and they needed to see the logo from, however far distance they are, so they can come over and know to play. And then, again, part of what I do is setting the budget and understanding where we're going to talk to the customers. It's a console launch. The game won a lot of awards already. It was a $60 game. So spending money on the PlayStation Store made sense. Spending money at an event made sense. But it is a thing where if you had $25,000 to do marketing for your game, where would you spend it? And you have to ask yourself, where would it be most effective? $25,000 on the PlayStation Store is going to get eaten really, really quickly. That might be about 1 million impressions, which is, blinks of the eye. That's not people even reading your ad or considering your ad or clicking your ad. And there's 100 million PlayStation 4s out there. So 1 million impressions on the PlayStation Network is actually not a lot, but it is worthwhile doing. At an event like PAX, people trying the game, understanding how it plays, us, getting email signups, or just watching people play and getting that sort of research out of it, making notes of what people are getting stuck on and that sort of deal. That also has its value. But again, $25,000 will get eaten really fast when you take into account renting a booth, printing graphics, shipping, drayage, paying guys to build your booth if you need that. That all has hotel rooms, right? That all accumulates really quickly. Marketing gets very expensive very quickly. And lastly, what I do, I measure success, I learn from my mistakes, and I evolve as a marketer. Even free marketing tools like MailChimp have quite a bit of analytics built into them, so you can see, open rates to your newsletter, or are people clicking through onto your newsletter? MailChimp being like an email newsletter tool. Google Analytics, another freebie. As long as you start your site, pay your $7 a month to GoDaddy or wherever you want to host your game page, connect Google Analytics to it, and you can see where's your web traffic coming from, who are your audiences. It'll take you your day or 2 days to kind of link everything up and build your site together, or pay someone to do this for you, right? There's a cost to time and money, but these are actually really simple tools that most anyone can use and implement, and the data you get about your customers are just invaluable. Arsenal, just to throw a couple more tools, Arsenal is a great tool to see who's streaming your games. This is not a free tool, but it does allow you to look at Twitch from places like Twitch and formerly Mixer at a holistic view and see, what are the popular games being streamed? Are people playing your games? Maybe you're going to come out with a fighting game and you want to find all the fighting game streamers real simply and to give them keys real simply. Arsenal is a great tool for that. And Hootsuite's another great tool for social media, scheduling your social media posts, also seeing who may have the biggest reach out of the people who are sharing your social media. You might find yourself an influencer or a gamer with a lot of influence that you can that has been active with your social media, and you can give them codes maybe to try your next free game or invite them to your private beta, that sort of thing. So essentially, that's what I do from just a 1,000-foot view. Implement marketing strategy, creative strategy, implement those tactics, and then measure that success. I've been doing this for over a decade now, so it is something that I specialize in. And unfortunately, I really wish I could give everyone here 2 years of business school in an hour. But because I can't, I do want to leave you with some just games business basics you can always keep in the back of your head. No matter where you are, whether you are starting indie or you are going to a big company, these are all things that you can always just kind of keep in mind just throughout your careers. The first one is very dry and very sad sounding. It's a company's goal is to maximize shareholder value. This is not a cold-hearted business guy thing I'm saying to you. Well, it is, but it's not coming from me. This is the lesson being just drilled into the heads of MBA students, business students, just all over the world. And all your VPs and CEOs leading big companies, Fortune 500 companies, that is their mission statement. The company's goal is to maximize shareholder value. What does that mean exactly? Well, using a really good EA meme, it means that they're going to implement probably some practices that aren't very consumer friendly, but would hopefully lead to more profitability for EA. More profitability for EA means that if, let me back up and say it this way. There are about 2 million shares of EA, over 2 million shares of EA that in the market right now. I think they're at about $120 or $130 a piece. So for the price of an Xbox Series X, you can buy, 4 or 5 shares of EA, own a piece of EA. And the only thing you really actually want to do at that point is see that stock price go up. And so if that means, nickel diming people for DLC, so that $120 stock you bought turns into $200, ultimately you're not going to care. Aside from you just buying that stock, if you're an EA employee and there's an employee stock purchase plan, which means you're buying stocks at an even greater discount, you just want to see that stock rise. If you have a 401k and a retirement plan, just not even working with EA, but at another company, your retirement plan might have investments in EA. That's a capital markets thing. EA's goal and its commitment is actually to you now as a shareholder and not to gamers, and frankly, not even to its employees. And that's why you see, again, many of you are going to see this in your careers, you're going to see companies do big layoffs. You're going to see companies shut down. When I was at Telltale Games and Telltale Games did shutter, it's not because of toxic crunch culture, I'm sad to say. I'm very sad to say that. It's not because of, people not buying enough games. It's because they spent too much money, they ran out of money, and there was a group of investors that realized that they were never going to get their money back. And so instead of giving the management at Telltale Games another $10 million or $20 million to keep the company floating, they just decided not to give any more money. Telltale Games couldn't take out any more loans, and that was just the end of Telltale Games. It's not really for any other reason but simply that. It's just its investors weren't going to get any more money, and people realized there was going to be no return on that investment. And those investors were people like the company Lionsgate Films. Entertainment companies and tech companies invested in this company. And so that's just the way things kind of shook out for Telltale Games. And so that's unfortunately just going to be what you'll be seeing in your careers. And to that, just to finish this slide, only you can maintain a work-life balance. Crunch and crunch culture is something that's spoken a lot about in games and game journals and just, throughout the industry. A company, the CEO of your company is not going to be there for the birth of your first child. It's something I always tell people. It's kind of half jokingly, but it's incredibly serious. I've seen people who've thrown 60-hour work weeks consistently, years of their lives into projects and into companies, not just in gaming, but just in companies as a whole. And it still doesn't prevent them from ultimately being part of a layoff. And that's hours in time you can be spending with family or friends or your own interests. So not to be a downer on it, but only you can really maintain that work-life balance and set those boundaries. And so always keep that in mind. Next business basic, always be respectful and professional. I know this is kind of like a soft thing, like a soft skills thing, but business is half soft skills. You have to be political. You don't want to burn bridges. And you're starting your professional network now with your classmates. Your reputation starts now. It doesn't start when you just get your new job. You don't know who you will need for a job referral or will be working with in the future, or may even be your boss. And the games industry is incredibly small. As expansive as it is, it ends up being a very small world. And I've weaved through companies, and I've worked with people who've weaved through other companies. I have a friend, just since my time with PlayStation, having worked with him, he's been to Twitch, and then he ended up in Google. And even at Versus Evil, I work with him because he's at Google, and I know him from my time at PlayStation. He's a good friend of mine. That's happening. That's happening really consistently. Don't waste people's times. Set agendas. Be incredibly respectful, and address people how you want to be addressed. Because again, the games industry is incredibly small, and your reputation will stick with you throughout. Next, I want to say is that game success is based mostly on the game itself. This is something brand managers or marketing people, business people, they'll probably never admit to you, but the success of your game is 90% based on your game, 5% luck, and 5% marketing. It really is. There's many game success stories where the games just didn't have a lot or traditional marketing behind them. PUBG is an example, right? It just kind of was a good game, built a community. It's a misnomer that there was no marketing, but you don't need that $10 million trailer for your game to be successful, to be profitable. It's a product-first industry. A good example here is Among Us, right? That's one that I'd say is 90% game, 5% luck right now. If you guys aren't familiar with this title, it's sort of the hot thing on Twitch right now. It's really popular right now just as a multiplayer game. It came out in 2018 and was developed by 3 people. And it was put on itch.io at name your price. So people could have picked it up for 99 cents or for a pennies if they wanted to. And they did have marketing. They did have artwork, they had ad copy, they had a trailer, but they didn't do active outreach or spend a lot of money. From what I've read, it's a popular streamer was told by a Twitch executive to check it out. They did, and it just sort of caught fire, became a sort of viral hit on Twitch, and now they're seeing tremendous success 2 years after launch. If they had some more marketing during launch, maybe they'd been successful. If we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, they may not be as successful as they are, and that's not me putting them down. That's just the 5%, you never know what's going on in the environment or in the marketplace or in the games industry. And so, they've sort of, in this environment, have sort of seen success. I want to contrast that to Anthem, right? We all are familiar with Anthem because they spent tens of millions of dollars in marketing. And Anthem is by no means a bad game. BioWare's an amazing developer. I love so many of their games. But that's one that when it came out, I think fans and critics kind of agreed, hey, this one probably could have spent a little bit more time in the oven. It wasn't quite right. For whatever reason, some executive at EA thought the game was great and done, or they needed to hit a quarterly revenue number and needed to release the game, or they had already spent tens of millions of dollars into this game and they just need to start seeing some of that money back. For various reasons, they just went ahead and released it. And You know, maybe it broke even. It might have been profitable because they spent so much marketing that first week. A lot of people went online and they played Anthem and they got Anthem and they spent their $60 or their $80 for the collector's edition, right? But I think that's a clear difference is we're all talking about and playing one of these games 2 years later. And one of these games we're not, even though they both came out the same year, right? So, you know, Among Us, they had updates throughout its lifeline. It's a solid game. It's only $5, so it's not apples to apples. It's a little apples to oranges, but you know, again, it's a very different experience. And it's a great game. It's a solid product for what you're paying for it. That being said, you know, marketing is incredibly important. Most gamers will decide whether they're going to buy your game in under a minute. When I was at PlayStation, we saw a lot of consumer research that said that if you're a regular franchise, that it takes, you know, 15 seconds, really. People decide once they see it or hear you're coming out. If you're Call of Duty, it takes about 15 seconds for people to decide if you're going to buy Call of Duty this year. You know, and it takes a little bit longer if you're new IP, but if you're a familiar genre, if you're making a first-person shooter and it's clear that it's a first-person shooter, even if you're new, it takes, you know, a little bit more time. Maybe they'll do a little research about you, but they're really making that decision at the margin in split seconds. So you have to make sure your art, your stills, your trailer, your logo, your description are always clear and attractive and they make sense. I'm going to give a couple examples. So this is just an Xbox store screenshot I got from online. You know, we can see All American Car Racing. I get it. It's All American Car Racing, even if I don't know the IP. We all see Kobe Bryant. Next to Kobe Bryant is this thing that looks like Candy Crush. It has the crown. It looks like the King logo. It's called a Clumsy Rush. I'm a little confused. It might be a match 3 puzzler. I'm moving on. The Coma 2 Vicious Sisters. It looks like anime horror. So if I like anime horror, I'm going to click. There's Avengers. There's Tony Hawk. There is something, I can't tell you what it is, Skelly Celeste. It tells me nothing about the game. And then next to it is another indie game, Lou's Revenge. I see a devil head in flames. I couldn't tell you the genre. I couldn't tell you what you do. I know there's devils. No interest, right? NBA 2K and then Perfect Traffic Simulator. I like sitting in traffic, sure, I'm gonna buy it. And then the PlayStation Store, again, in contrast, Madden, you see the Madden logo, you know you're gonna buy Madden this year or not, probably in seconds. If you don't, you're probably gonna call your friend, hey, are you buying Madden this year? Are we gonna play online together? And that really makes a decision. So you always have to just make sure your art's attractive, everything makes sense to people who aren't familiar with the product or your title. And marketing really starts there. It's not just about what you're posting on Facebook or the email marketing or influencers. It really starts at like art. Another business basic, don't get automated out of a job. And for some of you, if you're in level design or in programming, it may not be so scary. I think this one specifically affects producers, but the techie term is the 5th industrial revolution. And it's that AI is going to automate a lot of white-collar jobs. One thing that you can do to always get ahead of this is to use your critical thinking skills. I'm going to give you a very basic example of a bleak future. So if your executive producer comes to you and asks you for a budget roll-up, give me a summary of our budget in programming, in writing, in art, and animation, it's very easy for you to go pull those numbers, put them in Excel, and send them to your executive producer. Pretty soon a robot can do that. That's not something a robot can't do, right? A robot can also, book his meetings. All your boss, he or she has to do is speak into their phone and tell the phone to book a meeting, right? Their emails are finishing half their sentences now. So collecting budget information, just information gathering, booking rooms, setting meetings, these are all things that are incredibly automatable. But what's not automatable is when you send that budget roll-up, you identify efficiencies, inefficiencies, where you could potentially save budget, your recommendations on who has maybe additional hours that they could apply to different projects. Say you have extra man days available for your writing staff, and you want to flag that up to your executive producer. Say, hey, they can work on this project a little bit longer, maybe add some polish to the title. That's something the robots can't do yet, or won't be able to do that for quite a while. It's really going to be your critical thinking. It's really going to be your proactive approach, and just you thinking ahead. That's what's going to keep you just your career and your job just really viable. Don't get automated like poor Ivan Blacksmith over here. We don't need you. We don't need you, Ivan. We have machines now. Another business basic, and this is just when you're working with marketers or just want to know what's going on with the marketing campaign of the game you're working on anyway, is that a good marketing plan tries a lot of tactics. So, here's some of the Yaga examples. One, Apple made their own trailer for Apple Arcade's release of Yaga, and they put it on their social media and on their YouTube. Here's a screenshot from a Yaga review. We took a traditional PR approach. Our PR agency reached out to different journals and journalists and YouTube shows, websites, gave free Yaga codes, gave them a little explanation of the game, how to play the game explanation, and gave them an embargo date of when they could publish the reviews so we could get traditional reviews in the hopes of getting like 9s or 8s, getting a good Metacritic ranking, so people can see, hey, Yaga's a good game. And then this is a Russian ad. From our web traffic, we saw that we had a lot of people from Russia interested in the game. Yaga is a game where you play as a blacksmith fighting a lot of Russian fairy tale monsters. So we decided to spend a little money on Russian social media, localize our advertising in Russian, and just run some advertising in Russia just as a tactic. The point is that, even if you have a multiplayer game and you think, oh, I'm just going to give it to a bunch of streamers or pay a bunch of Twitch streamers, that's a good tactic for that type of game, but it's not the only thing that you should be doing. You can't just start posting on Twitter and Facebook about your game and expect that to equate into sales, right? You can't just post a trailer onto YouTube and hope people are going to find it. You have to do a lot of different things. Part of that is because you never know what's really going to click or what's really going to connect and work, what people are paying attention to and where they're looking that day. There's not one silver bullet in marketing. As much as we always are looking for something, there isn't one just right answer that for sure always sells a game. All marketing, and lastly, all marketing needs a clear goal. Again, a big one that goes to producers, and I'm going to reiterate this later, but all marketing should have an idea of what you're trying to achieve. Don't sweat, you post something onto Facebook and you only get 7 likes. Don't sweat that. But what you should say to yourself is, okay, we're building a social media presence. We want to get 1,000 followers. We want those 1,000 followers to turn into 100 wish lists, because we can assume that 100 wish lists is going to turn into 25 people buying the game. Is it sales? Is it wish lists? Is it pre-orders? Is it a newsletter sign up? It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, sales is most important. But as long as you kind of have a goal, you have an idea of what you're working towards and why that's good, why it's effective, then you're on the right track. Here's a pre-order example. We gave out a dynamic thing for PlayStation 4. If the PlayStation Store sees your game is pre-ordering really well, they're going to give you more store support. That's just a truth. They're going to say, hey, this game's really gaining interest. It's really popular. People are giving us $60 now for a game they don't own. Yeah, let's promote it and give it more store placement and get more people to buy this game. If this was a multiplayer game, if this was like a Far Cry 6, a pre-order could mean to you not just one sale. It could mean 1.1 sales or 1.2 sales, because again, you have someone pre-ordering the game and they're going to call their friend or DM their friend and say, hey, can you get Far Cry 6 at launch so we can play together? And so a pre-order could, again, equal into more than one sale. So just something to keep in mind, and it's especially important to keep in mind because your time is incredibly valuable in developing the game. Some specific guidance for producers, just again, because producers are so business facing. I want to go through some producer tools of the trade that I've seen and some of my producer friends have seen. You guys may be using some of these in your education. Digital asset management, tools like Alien Brain and Perforce. Bug tracking software like Jira and UTrack. I'm even in Jira. Task management, Trello, Asana, MS Project. Task management and project management tools are really numerous. I could go on with the list, but Trello is probably one of the more popular ones. The Excel and Microsoft Office suite. Get really good at Excel because I've seen some of the most insane project trackers / calculators built in Excel. Things I could never replicate. So just, make sure your MS Office suite, things like Word, PowerPoint, you're also gonna have to use, but Excel is the one that throughout your career, you're probably gonna get quite a bit of advanced knowledge on. And then lastly, document repository. Again, I use a lot of these as well, not being a producer, but things like Confluence, MediaWiki, you're going to go through a lot of game documentation, a lot of progress and status updates. And so making sure you have all this documented is going to be incredibly important. Universal qualities to the job. So just some things that you're going to develop, personal skills you're going to have to develop, professional skills you're going to have to develop as producers. Is first and foremost communication. Communication is going to be number one. You're going to be communicating with a broad variety of people in a broad variety of ways. You might be getting slacked from your 3D artist that the ZBrush models are going to be a day late. At the same time, your executive producer is walking up to your desk, asking you how many hours left we have available for writing team budget, essentially. And so you're going to be hit by a lot of different types of people asking for a lot of different things. And when it comes to marketing people, in particular, forward communication, proactive communication is vital for two core reasons. One, you don't want your marketing people going directly to your team because you're managing workflows, you're managing a lot of people's work processes and a lot of staff. And if they're circumventing you to go straight to artists or writers or creative directors for their blog posts or social media posts or game footage, all these things are very important, but they don't know that they're going to be messing up your flow, right? And ultimately, the game being on track and on budget is falling on your shoulders. So one, being proactive with the marketing people, it's important for that reason. Number two, you know your game best. Your marketer doesn't know your art and asset pipeline, right? So here's a Yaga example. This witch monster went through different iterations. I needed the game developer to tell me when we were going to get to that final iteration. I don't know. I'm over here talking to vendors and doing market research or what have you. It was up to him to come to me and say, hey, this witch is going to be rigged and animated and in-game at such and such date. And it's going to be ready for capture and making GIFs and talking about to basically to the public. Great, incredibly helpful. We're able to include this character into videos, and it's a really cool character, right? The marketers don't know what really cool stuff will be coming out and when, so it's incredibly important. Next is critical thinking and problem solving. You're going to be dealing with a lot of efficiencies and inefficiencies, and you're going to be connecting a lot of different departments together to save time and money. There's a lot of corners you may have to cut or budget restrictions you're going to face, and so coming up with creative solutions, maybe cutting the time that cutscene runs in half to save your budget, and how to maybe work with the creative team to not put the camera on, a certain character, maybe have actions happen off screen so you don't have to animate them, right? Those sort of budget saving tips. A lot of that's going to have to come from you as someone who again, owns the time, the schedule, and owns the budget. Project management and time management, you're herding a lot of cats. You're keeping schedules up to date. You're pushing people along to goals, and you're writing this down somewhere. You're putting it in Excel or in a tracker somewhere. Flexibility. So flexibility, this one as well, in sort of two categories. One, for many of you who are junior and just starting your careers in the game industry, you will not get the fanciest producer job, right? You might be booking rooms and scheduling meetings, unfortunately, and taking dictation. That's okay. It's all part of learning. You've got to learn your role. You've got to learn how a place operates, and it's a lot of on-the-job learning. Just be flexible and open-minded that way. Another way flexibility comes into place is because the games industry, I mean, it's games development. It's constantly shifting. It's constantly changing. You don't know when you're going to have to add an extra language into your game, or how someone may need a demo, or you might need to work on a quick patch to quickly fix your game, day of launch or day after launch, right? So you just have to be flexible, on your toes. And lastly is honesty. Milestones, if they're only 99% complete, they're not complete. If a game is looking bad and it just needs more time, it needs more budget, if someone on the team is just not doing their part, you have to be transparent and you have to be honest, because it's just going to come back to you later, and it's just going to make your job a lot harder later. So full, honest, transparent communication, and communicating up to your superiors as to what's going on with the project is incredibly important. It's incredibly universal quality to this role. Quickly, I'm going to go through some publisher role versus studio role differences. In a publisher like Versus Evil, you might be working on multiple projects, getting your name on a lot of credits, working with marketing folks like myself, but also legal and QA and executives and community managers, working with lawyers and licensors. At Telltale Games, we work with the people who own the Walking Dead franchise quite a bit, and we have to pass by them what we could and could not do with the franchise. Review and approve developer milestones, do rating submissions, like work with the ESRB or the USK in Germany or Zero in Japan, procure and outsource different resources your devs might need, and then work directly with first party, Microsoft, Apple, sending them, builds, submitting things into lot check, just getting new development and technical requirements from them and relaying that back to the development teams. In the studio, you'll be mainly focused on one project, most likely. You'll be working with animators and artists and programmers and writers a little bit more than you would in publishing. If your studio is self-publishing, you're probably doing all of it, which is a lot of fun, and you'll get to learn quite a bit. You get to identify dependencies and efficiencies between teams. You'll be the point of contact for the publishing producer. And then depending on the scope, you might actually specialize, right? So if you're working on a live game, you might be an online producer or a live producer. You may be a game lead producer. It just really depends on how big your game is. And then working with marketers, remember, number one, marketers don't know your game as well as you do. Time is money, and time is your absolute most important asset. Always ask your marketers, what are we getting marketing-wise for pulling focus off of development, right? 8 hours spent on marketing is not 8 hours spent on making your game better. And that 8 hours making your game better is incredibly important. But if you're gonna get, great PlayStation Store featuring or, really great IGN coverage for some reason, then, you might wanna consider taking that time from development into marketing. And it's because if the project is over time and over budget, again, it's on you. I'm gonna quickly speed through the last part so we can get to Q&A. I wanted to close with some quick recommendations. If you ever want to look at just games industry sites, there's plenty. My favorite is gamesindustry.biz. So put that on your list, or if you haven't, if you don't look at the games industry from just a business standpoint, try just looking it up in the morning before you start your day. You get a good idea of what's going on, the new trends, where we're kind of moving towards. Also, publicly traded game companies release quarterly reports. As business students, we got really used to reading public quarterly reports. but it's basically how are games industry making their money? Are they losing money? And they usually, give context about what succeeded and what did not succeed for their companies. A lot of just regular games sites will also just report on quarterly reports when notable companies like a Capcom or Sega will make a statement. But again, if you can buy a stock in this company, you can read about the company's health and just learn a lot more about the company's core business that way. If you just want to be better business people in general, the two go-tos are the Wall Street Journal and The Economist. They're very dry and have a very matter-of-fact way of looking at industries as a whole, not just the games industry. But if you just want to become a better business person, like I said, those are the go-tos that business students are just go to. And then lastly, for fun, best book about the games industry is a comic book. It's Tetris. My personal favorite, Tetris, the game people play. It's a graphic novel about Tetris coming to market. It starts with in 1985 with the inventor of Tetris, but it's also a very great look at games industry, distribution, marketing, sales. It goes into the start of Nintendo a little bit. Even though a lot of it happens over the course of the 80s and 90s, a lot of those lessons are still incredibly applicable today. So it's been one of my favorite reads, and I can't recommend it more than enough. And I just want to have a closing word, essentially on the elephant in the room, COVID-19, right? Like other industries, the game industry is adapting and changing incredibly rapidly. We can't do in-person events in the States right now. They did China Joy in China, and they had like crazy contact tracing and people taking their temperatures at every sort of turn. And, so they had events in China recently for games industry. We're not doing something like that in the States. Things like mocap, I'm sure, is being slowed down. Manufacturing for your favorite game consoles definitely had to take a sort of a hit during this time. So, we're all adapting to something that's completely new and scary. But I do want to leave you guys with a little bit of optimism because this is an industry that jobs can be done from the home. Products are purchased and sold at the home. And what you're doing right now is incredibly important. This is probably the most important video games has been to society, maybe ever, because people are flocking to them as virtual spaces to connect with each other and spend time with each other. The games industry has always essentially just been ice cream, just selling something that's not a need, something that's kind of throwaway and disposable, and people don't really spend, has a small share of relative wallet to all the other things you have to buy in life, like a car or your rent or your electricity, right? But right now, we're in a space to do a lot of social good. The games industry is thriving in this situation. And I want to leave you with this. Guildhall is an incredible program. It is a fantastic program. You guys are going to have your ups and downs throughout your education, but all my producer friends looked at your sort of schedule of everything you guys are doing and learning, all incredibly jealous, all so mad. They wish they had something like this when they were younger. And when I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area, I would apply to jobs like at Apple or Facebook. And a lot of times there would be a college drop-down box. And I would go for SMU. Oftentimes there wasn't a Southern Methodist University, there was an SMU Guildhall. SMU Guildhall is renowned nationally as a program that even like Apple and Facebook and Amazon recognize it. Like it's on this list with UT and then going to Harvard. Oh, you went to SMU Guildhall, right? More so than other aspects of SMU. Like you guys are an incredible program. I think you all have very bright futures ahead of you, and the games industry is just going to continue to sort of grow and expand. So even throughout this scary time, I do want you all to have a sense of there's a future. There's a future for all of you, and that we'll make it out of this relatively okay. So with that, feel free to linked in with me. If you have just questions or ever just have a question, about the games industry, you want to pick my brain. I love talking about video games. I'm a huge nerd since I was 3. I've played video games and read EGMs and Game Informers and just whatever all my life. So I'm just a big nerd and I want to nerd out with people. So feel free to email me. And then with that, I'll leave it to Q&A. If you guys don't know what to ask me about, I have some suggestions on here, but please, I just want to give it to the floor.
All right, awesome. Joel, that was excellent. Thank you so much. So I've turned the feature off now. So if you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and keep it pretty casual. So we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm a second-year producer here at Guildhall, and I was hoping if you could tell me some advice or tell me about classic mistakes that small teams make when publishing to Steam, like in the marketing side.
Classic mistakes. That's a good question. Sorry, give me a second to think about this one. From a marketing side, I think it's you always have to trust the marketing people. There's a lot of people who aren't very good at marketing. I'm thinking of a very specific example in my head. I don't want to put that person on blast. Sorry. Here's a good one. There's no right answer for your budget. So just start small. There are big companies. I know I've heard of EA trying to implement a marketing budget as a proportion of the actual production budget and trying to pick things at a 20% or 30%. But there's kind of no right answer. I recently just launched a product this year, and I proposed $10,000 in paid media or something like that, something kind of small. And the dev team was pretty surprised. They actually expected a lot more. But taking a modest approach, starting pretty simply. There's a lot of good sort of dev talks on this. I think the guy who's founded No More Robots actually has a really good GDC speech on this. Marketing doesn't have to be an expensive thing. You can pick up MailChimp again for free. Social media profiles, they're free. Producing content definitely costs money. And you are sort of paywalled through social media companies like Instagram and Facebook. You're not reaching a lot of people actually unless you pay Mark Zuckerberg some money to reach people, sadly. But it doesn't have to be a lot. You can do $100 here, you can do $50 a post there. We had that conservative marketing budget for that recent game launch. The game didn't do great. Not all our games, unfortunately, are successful or very profitable. That's the nature of the business. But that game, through our connections as a publisher, did end up getting a Steam daily deal and being on the front of Steam. So millions and millions and millions of people were exposed to the game on the front page of Steam. Well, we did see a sales spike, but it wasn't anything that really blew things out of the water. And there is no marketing, there's no really dollar amount can match to being on the front of Steam. There's nothing really more valuable. You can buy placement on the PlayStation Store and they denote a dollar amount to that. And it's very expensive. So we got this placement on Steam. We saw the sales spike. It did okay. But it really just justified to me the low marketing spend we gave to the game. And the game's a really good game, but you never really quite predict why a game's going to connect to the zeitgeist. That's the 5% luck to it. You really don't know why a game about a goose solving puzzles is going to outsell Zelda one year. There's just absolutely no way to predict that, right? And so, I'd say start modest with any marketing budgets. Keep your expectations, I don't want to say keep your expectations low, but yeah, just sort of don't beat yourself down. Don't beat yourself up if your game doesn't succeed either. I think that's another big one. That's why publishers keep a large portfolio of games, because majority of your games aren't, going to be that successful, or they may struggle to even break even. Sorry if that was long-winded. Tried to answer that the best I could. Any other questions, folks, on companies I've worked or projects I've worked on or coming trends or anything like that? Happy to answer.
What was your worst experience?
In my career?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is a crazy story. I cost my department at PlayStation like $500,000 or something like that. Also, it's like $500,000. So PlayStation is a gigantic corporation with a million moving parts. It's one of those things, I didn't get to work on the studio side, but just being in the sales department and just being in the corporate headquarters, like you're a cog in a wheel. And that's not putting PlayStation down. When you're just that size, that's just how that goes. And departments are siloed. There's a lot of inefficiencies. There's a lot of layers, like directors and senior managers and senior directors of the managers, like just nonsense, right? And bureaucracy. So we were doing a promotion with GameStop where we were giving out PlayStation Plus codes. And PlayStation proper used to be a separate company from the PlayStation Network, the people who run PlayStation Plus and the PlayStation Online group, right? They've merged since, they merged recently in the recent years, but when I first started, they were completely separate companies. So getting PlayStation Plus codes to GameStop as a promotion to buy PS4s or Vitas or whatever we were doing at the time required me filling out a form and submitting something to PlayStation Online. When two companies that are part of a corporate entity purchase things from each other, there's a thing called a transfer cost. That's so one corporate arm doesn't lose money, right? If you're making cars and one part of your company makes tires and the other part makes the body, and the people making the body wants to buy tires, you want to make sure that part of the company that makes tires is still profitable, if that makes sense. So I ended up doing this order for PlayStation Plus codes, and they came in at a transfer cost. I guess my VP at the time didn't realize I'd done that, which I was following, sort of order and directions and everything. But he came back incredibly flustered because it cost my department $500,000, and his reaction was, "Oh, I could have just called a VP over there and gotten all these free." So that was terrible. It was also terrible just because I've moved on to smaller and smaller companies. I've not been a big company person personally because of all the bureaucracy and all that stuff and all those moving pieces. I was on the Amazon.com account when a Call of Duty PS4 bundle leaked. And I got into the office one morning and the PS4 bundle had leaked on Amazon before the PR department had announced it. So I got pulled into a room with a bunch of VPs. I had nothing to, it was on Amazon. They pulled the lever early, that sort of thing. Our people there. But it was just one of those things where it was just like, oh, this being in a big company is really rough because there's just so many people dependent on each other and a lot of moving parts, and you don't really know what who's going to mess up, right? Anyone else?
You referenced coming trends. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, coming trends. So, the game industry is always evolving, right? So I do think that highly social games like we see with Among Us or like we see with Animal Crossing, will continue to be a trend. I think you're going to see companies and developers kind of chase that. That's what you typically see, right? Like when Rock Band became a thing, you saw a bunch more music games. I think you're going to see a lot more casual sort of hangout places. These things have existed for years, right? Second Life coming to mind. You can just hang out all day in Roblox. But I think those types of games and the games within those games, like in Roblox, are just going to sort of continue to expand. I think you're going to see a lot more VR content. For a long time, developers had a hard time making VR profitable because the technology was so new and there weren't enough customers for it. But the price of those VR rigs and those VR hardware has come down. I don't think it'll ever be as quite as successful as just mainstream gaming or mobile gaming. But those costs have come down. The headsets are getting lighter. I think there will be a day someday, maybe 10 years in the future or something, where VR headsets are very easy to put on. They're very light and they're very flexible. And then I think they would hit critical mass. Until that time, I don't think it'll be a critical mass thing. Like, I think there are maybe like 10 million PlayStation VRs in the market or something like that, but there are like 100 PlayStation 4s. 10 million's not like a number to like scoff at, but also when you are PlayStation, when you are Sony, like that's not necessarily a crowning achievement either. You know, compared to all the other products. You know, you sell 100 million PlayStation 4s, that means you've probably you've probably sold over 200 million DualShock 4s at $60 a piece, right? So that's the type of numbers that they're used to kind of dealing with. But I do think we're going to see more VR content. I do think we're going to see more sort of social and sharing space games for people to connect with.
Any other questions? All right. Well, Joel, we are so grateful for your time and thank you for sharing all these insights. We're giving you a big virtual thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody. I'm humbled to be speaking with you guys today. Thank you again so much for having me.